Zoe heard that out of the 5 management trainees, only 3 would be retained by the company. She tried every means to fight for her spot. But it seemed like she was having a hard time securing the opportunity. Unexpectedly, during one overtime session in a segment captured on surveillance video, a chance presented itself to her. So, Zoe decided to take a risk. "I'm almost at your company. Have you finished work?" It was just past 10 p.m., and Chase's voice, accompanied by the howling wind, reached Zoe's ears. "Almost done, just need to check the server room." Zoe replied, swiping the access card to open the server room door. The thunderous hum of precision air conditioning interrupted their conversation. Zoe glanced at each server rack, found nothing unusual, and turned around only to be stunned. The video surveillance footage on the desk was frozen at 8 minutes ago. The server storing the video surveillance was a bit outdated. Zoe had suggested replacing it when she first joined, but the approval process was still pending. Checking the time, Zoe asked Chase to wait a bit longer. She needed to reboot the server in case of packet loss and handle any issues. "Can you handle it alone?" Chase asked, complaining again, "Why is it always you working overtime, and even if you do these tasks, your efforts may not be recognized by the leaders?" "What else can I do?" Zoe sighed. "Didn't I tell you? It's crucial right now, I have to perform well. Anyway, I'll handle it first and report to the supervisor tomorrow when I get a chance." She held the phone with her shoulder, talking while swiftly typing on the keyboard. As the code flowed, the time on the surveillance screen began to change. Zoe checked each screen one by one and suddenly stopped. "What's wrong?" Chase asked on the other end. "I'll call you back later, something came up." Zoe hastily hung up and approached the camera that had caught her attention. A man and a woman were passionately kissing in a dark corner, seemingly oblivious to their surroundings. She stared fixedly, breathing rapidly, her heartbeat uncontrollably accelerating. Zoe recognized the woman. It was Nora, the human resources general manager of the company she had recently joined. As for the man, Zoe adjusted the time forward and finally saw his face. Fair skin, sharp eyebrows, and starry eyes. It was Jason, the deputy general manager of the human resources department, voted as the company's attractive staff in private circles. Both, if memory served, were married individuals. The man had even recently shared his son's 100th day photo on social media. Zoe was stunned for a few seconds, subconsciously looking around. The night was deep, and apart from the machine sounds, she was alone in this place. She took out her phone, bent over, and took a few shots of the screen. Then, she quickly typed on the keyboard, deleting the segment of surveillance video from the server. Just in case, Zoe thought. If possible, she hoped no one would ever know about this incident. Even if someone found out, it had nothing to do with her. 2 months ago, Zoe graduated with a major in network and computer science from a local university, a prestigious 211 institution. She then joined this joint venture company, becoming a management trainee in the IT department. 4 others joined the company at the same time as Zoe. Although they were labeled as management trainees, the reality was that for the first 2 years, they would rotate through various departments. Zoe and another girl, Aria, were assigned to the information center, responsible for company system and network maintenance, commonly known as network administration. The other 3 guys were placed in the solution center. Zoe felt a bit disappointed. Chase tried to console her, mentioning that management trainees usually had to rotate, and starting with development work didn't necessarily mean it was more valued. Information technology was crucial for business development nowadays, and as long as she had the skills, she would shine wherever she was. Zoe thought his perspective was somewhat naive, but at this point, she could only take it one step at a time. Fortunately, her solid knowledge and resilient personality made her perform well. She had no complaints about putting servers on shelves or working late at night to back up data. Her supervisor had a favorable opinion of her, at least better than Aria's. However, just as she was gaining confidence in her future at the company, Aria secretly pulled her into the stairwell and revealed unexpected news. "No way? They didn't mention this during recruitment." Zoe was shocked. "They didn't." Aria glanced outside the door, covering her mouth and leaning in close to Zoe's ear. "I heard that last year, the market department recruited 8 management trainees, but only retained 4. Some people say the initial quota for IT management trainees was 3, but for some reason, it became 5 later. My HR classmate told me that some companies have partnerships with schools, and it doesn't look good if they don't hire anyone from a particular school. But in reality, the company might not actually keep that many people." Are you saying that some of us might be let go among the 5? Zoe still found it hard to believe. Oh, Zoe, how can you be so oblivious? Arya frowned at her. It's obvious the company only wants Parker and the other 2. Why else would they all be placed in the development department, while the 2 of us are in the information center? Just because they're guys, and we're girls, right? Zoe was left stunned. If her fate was sealed just because of her gender, would her efforts even matter? You're really naive. Seeing Zoe in this state, Arya probably thought there was nothing more to discuss and rolled her eyes before leaving. Lost in thought, Zoe pondered for a moment, intending to leave the stairwell when she coincidentally encountered her supervisor, Evan, coming in for a smoke. Evan, Zoe hesitated for a moment and cautiously asked, when the company recruits IT management trainees, will there be another round of eliminations after they start working? Eliminations? Evan shook his head. This is the first time we've recruited IT management trainees this year. How they will be arranged in the end probably depends on the Human Resources Department. He then encouraged Zoe, but your performance has been consistently good. If the HR department asks for my opinion, I will definitely recommend keeping you. With Evan's assurance, Zoe became even more determined not to slack off. She worked hard to build good relationships with her colleagues, and she eagerly took on almost every task that she could handle. Why don't you try sending out more resumes? In case what that girl said is true, at least we'll have a backup plan, Chase, her boyfriend, suggested. Zoe agreed with him. Over the next 2 weeks, she sent out over 100 resumes through various job platforms for recent graduates. However, to Zoe's disappointment, whether they replied to her or reached out first, most of the opportunities were in sales positions. Even the occasional technical roles were in small startup companies, or worse, in human resources outsourcing firms. If only I had clarified things during the campus recruitment, Zoe sighed anxiously. Now, all the good companies have probably filled their positions. The first job after graduation is so crucial. If I casually join a not-so-great company, my resume won't be impressive when I want to switch jobs in the future. But if I don't take any offers and things don't work out here, what will I do then? Chase couldn't provide a solution either. He joined a large internet company himself. Although he was working on projects and pulling long hours, there seemed to be no risk of unemployment. Didn't your supervisor say it's up to the Human Resources Department? Zoe's mom and dad discussed and offered her advice. Don't be afraid to network. Either invite them for a meal or send a small gift. Don't worry about the money, mom and dad will cover it. But Zoe found this approach too awkward. She had never dealt with such situations before and felt unsure about how to initiate it. What's there to be afraid of? Her mom comforted her. We're not really using connections. If your work performance is good, we'll know we deserve the opportunity ourselves. What we're doing is expressing our stance to the leaders in the Human Resources Department, hoping for a fair chance. If we make mistakes, we'll accept criticism and strive to meet their expectations. Unable to bear the embarrassment, Zoe spent another week sending out resumes. During this time, she received 2 interview invitations. However, one of the companies exaggerated their achievements. In reality, it had only about 10 employees, leveraging some connections to undertake a few integration projects without even having its own development team. The other company was even more outrageous. After 3 rounds of consecutive interviews, lasting over 2 hours in total, they informed Zoe that the salary was $2,500, with a possibility of an increase to $3,000 after 6 months if she performed well. Do they not realize that with such a low salary, I might not even survive until 6 months later? Zoe complained to Chase. How about inviting your human resources leader to dinner? Chase scratched his head. After all, she's the one who brought you in. Maybe she'd be willing to help. So, early Saturday morning, Zoe and Chase headed to the mall to pick out a gift. From perfumes priced around $600 to $700, to sunglasses over $1,000, and scarves exceeding $2,000. After comparing for most of the day, Zoe finally chose a bracelet from a lesser-known luxury brand. She felt it wasn't overly flattering but wouldn't put too much pressure on the recipient. In the evening, she mustered the courage to call Nora, the general manager of the Human Resources Department, asking if she had time the next day for lunch or dinner. I can squeeze in some time, but the question is, Nora laughed. Zoe, why are you suddenly inviting me to dinner? Mainly to express my gratitude for bringing me into the company, Zoe stammered, her palms sweaty. That's because your written test and interview results were good. I'm just fulfilling my job responsibilities. Nora paused for a moment. Did you hear something? No, Zoe didn't dare admit it, insisting she just wanted to express gratitude and hoped for some guidance in her work. If that's the case, there's no need for dinner. If you have any questions, feel free to come to me anytime, Nora straightforwardly said. In fact, Evan has been with the company for 7 or 8 years, and he's very familiar with the company's situation. As long as you work diligently and ask questions, there's no need to overthink. In the workplace, it ultimately comes down to your skills. As long as your skills are strong, others can't deny you, no matter what they want. Well, in that case, just focus on your work. Maybe it's just a rumor. Besides, Nora also mentioned that the workplace competition is about abilities, Chase comforted Zoe. Zoe had no choice but to return the gift. After all, Nora had explicitly stated that workplace success depended on skills. Persisting in giving a gift would only make Zoe feel extremely embarrassed. A few days later, the internal messaging software of the company underwent an upgrade. Evan, concerned about potential issues during the upgrade, planned to have someone stay back at the office. Zoe immediately volunteered. That evening, she worked overtime until past 10, ensuring the software upgrade went smoothly. Afterward, she prepared to check the server room before leaving. However, during the inspection, she discovered a problem with the surveillance server. Even more unexpectedly, as Zoe resolved the issue, she saw an inappropriate scene on the surveillance footage. Zoe used her phone to capture the footage and deleted the few minutes of video. However, she hadn't fully thought through her actions at that moment. She just felt that if things went awry, having this material might be useful. Outside the company gate, Zoe was still in a panic. Chase tried talking to her, but she seemed absent-minded. "What's wrong?" Chase was puzzled. "Why did you suddenly hang up the phone?" "Chase," Zoe looked around, grabbed his arm, and motioned for him to lean in. She then explained what she had seen in the surveillance video. "Then what? Is that woman attractive?" Chase had a curious expression. "Is that all you care about?" Zoe gave him a glare. "What else is there? Two married people, even if they don't know there's surveillance in that corner, it's not like a raging fire between them." Chase rubbed his chin. "Unless that woman is exceptionally beautiful." "I just said she's the general manager of the Human Resources Department. Didn't you hear that?" Zoe nudged him with her elbow. "So what?" Chase suddenly remembered something. "Oh right, why did you record that video?" "Lower your voice." Zoe got nervous again, looked around, and then lowered her voice. "Now, among the 5 management trainees, only 3 may be kept by the end of the year. I'm not afraid of fair competition, but I'm afraid they didn't want female trainees from the beginning. If that's the case, and I miss out on other campus recruitment opportunities, wouldn't that be unfair to me?" "So what?" Chase asked again. "If the general manager of the Human Resources Department wants to keep me, she must have a way. I deleted the video from the surveillance, which could be considered helping them. Shouldn't she help me in return?" Zoe gritted her teeth, finished speaking, and let out a heavy sigh. "Are you suggesting you want to threaten her?" Chase was dumbfounded. "Is that even feasible? There was still a slight chance for me to stay. If you act like this and she disagrees, won't I lose even that chance?" Actually, Zoe was just talking tough. For a recent graduate stepping out of the university gates, there's a lack of both experience and courage when it comes to taking certain actions. So, she decided to observe for a while, or rather, evade the situation. However, sometimes, once you know something, it seems like everything happening around you is related to that one thing. On the day after Zoe recorded the small film featuring Nora and Jason, she forgot her access card when going downstairs for lunch. As she took the stairs back up, she happened to overhear another management trainee talking on the phone. "Seriously, why don't you believe it? Everyone's saying only 3 will be kept. And I heard they'll decide in the next 2 weeks," the guy said. Zoe froze in her tracks. Whatever was said on the other end made the guy smile. "Being outstanding? Come on, don't fool me. Who among those who got in is a weakling? Anyway, it's a fair competition for all," he continued. Zoe initially thought he wouldn't pass the interview, but upon joining, she found out that not only did he make it through, but he also interned at the company for 3 months before graduating. The reasons behind this were something worth pondering. There were a few more sentences exchanged on the call. With his hands in his pockets, the guy looked somewhat arrogant. "Let's see how it goes. Actually, I don't really want to do research and development, but my uncle says having a technical background will help in the long run." He kept talking as he walked away, his voice gradually fading. However, Zoe remained standing there, stunned. While she was still contemplating how to secure her position, others had already planned out their futures. Fair competition? What a joke. Nevertheless, one slot was undoubtedly reserved for that guy. Among the other 2 male trainees, Parker was exceptionally skilled in technology. He participated in network security competitions and even won awards. Zoe knew she couldn't compete with him. So, there was only one chance left. Zoe tightly gripped her phone, her heart pounding. The entire stairwell seemed to echo with the sound of her rapid breathing. Might as well go down in flames. If it's about choosing between dying and waiting to die, she'd rather take matters into her own hands. In the end, with determination, Zoe decided to do the most audacious thing in her life. Perhaps the most shameless thing. Since others weren't willing to give her a fair chance, she'd create her own fairness. So what? Nora had a habit of staying an extra 10 minutes after work. Even though their company, due to foreign investment, officially discouraged overtime, the leaders were Chinese, and not finding someone 2 minutes after official working hours was likely displeasing to them. Many details constitute the differences between individuals, and Nora always paid attention to such nuances. However, what surprised her was that today someone knocked on her office door right on time. Something on your mind? Nora looked somewhat surprised at Zoe standing at the door. Nora, Zoe lowered her head, staring at her own toes. You mentioned that I could come to you anytime if I had questions. Nora did say that. But in the workplace, who takes such statements seriously? Nora observed Zoe. She was an ordinary, young woman. Standing there, fidgeting with the seam of her jeans, she even looked a bit like a grade schooler who had done something wrong. Come in, Nora turned to the side, revealing a professional smile. However, before her smile fully emerged, Zoe's words nailed it in place. Zoe said, on the evening of September 17th, both you and Jason were working overtime in the office, right? Coincidentally, I was too. Nora suddenly turned to look at her. Avoiding her gaze, Zoe pursed her lips, entered the office, hesitated for a moment, and then closed the door. What did you mean by that statement just now? Nora took a deep breath, turned back to her desk, and deliberately spoke slowly. Zoe, you know, our company doesn't judge your work ability and performance based on whether you work overtime or not. Zoe lowered her head again. Yeah. What I meant was, on the evening of September 17th, around 10:20 p.m., I was in the office. Her voice was very soft, almost inaudible if not attentively listening. Nora froze. Her gaze lingered once again on the girl's face. When she mentioned overtime just now, in addition to emphasizing the time, Zoe also stressed herself and Jason. Yes, that wasn't an illusion. Zoe said that sentence intending to convey this information to her. Could she have seen it? Thinking of this, a chill ran down Nora's spine. But it was impossible. The corridor was empty that night. So, Nora instinctively looked towards the door. Could there be a surveillance camera in that position? In the 6 months since moving to this office, she had never paid attention to this matter. If there wasn't someone standing in front of her, Nora would have rushed to the door to confirm now. Nora, Zoe's palms were sweaty, but she forcefully disguised herself as calm. I went to the server room to check. Coincidentally, there was an issue with the surveillance server. I fixed it. I really love this job and want to stay in the company. I hope you can put in a good word for me. I'll wait for your message. After saying that, she bowed to Nora, then walked out of her office without looking back. Watching Zoe leave, Nora opened the office door and casually glanced at the ceiling on both sides. At the end of the corridor, near the curtain box, there was a camera. It was well concealed, and it would be challenging for someone unaware to notice it. Zoe hid in the corner, extending her phone slightly. Nora's pale face was clearly reflected on the screen. She breathed out heavily, pressed against the wall, and stealthily entered the secure passage. Half an hour later, Nora's car stopped outside the back gate of a residential area. Jason had been out all day attending training. He hadn't had a chance to hug his son when he returned home before Nora called him downstairs. There's a camera in the corridor. As soon as the car door closed, Nora said. Jason wasn't initially pleased. What did it mean for her to come to the door of his house for a voluntary matter? But upon hearing Nora's words, his emotions froze before showing on his face. What camera? Jason asked instinctively. There's a camera in the corridor just outside our department's door, Nora said. I asked people from the information center. They're all high-definition cameras with night recording capabilities. So you mean? Jason suddenly understood, and his expression changed immediately. Yes, Nora stared at him. That night, we were recorded. How did you find out? Not for nothing was Jason, at the age of 32, the second in command in the Human Resources Department. He quickly grasped the key issue. Nora explained what happened with Zoe coming to see her. Then, leaning back in her seat, she covered her eyes with the back of her hand, her voice carrying a hint of exhaustion. Some things are destined. It just happened that the surveillance server had a problem at that time, and she dealt with it. But she should have deleted it from the server in front of me, Jason said, feeling relieved upon hearing her explanation. I guess this girl named Zoe made a copy. It doesn't matter, since she just wants to stay in the company, let's keep her. Tomorrow, communicate with her. Anyway, in the future, right under our noses, what we need to worry about is her. But, Nora hesitated, even if she deleted it in front of me, what if there's a backup? Unless she really doesn't want to work in the circle anymore. Jason snorted. What can a young girl do? If she's really not afraid, why did she wait so long to come to you? What was she up to in the beginning? A man's heart needs to be steady, Nora thought. In reality, she probably hadn't considered that despite being extramarital affairs, society's tolerance for her and Jason would differ. So, are you going to talk to her? Nora asked. Why should I talk to her? Am I responsible for everything again? Before Jason could finish speaking, Nora became agitated. It's a matter between two people, don't think you can escape from it. Who said I wanted to escape? Jason glanced at her, handing over a box of strawberries he casually picked up on the way downstairs. His voice was soothing. Emotions are complex. I'm happy being with you, and I don't think I've done anything wrong. However, we can't expect everyone to understand. I won't approach her because it would make us appear frantic, providing an opportunity for others. Watching Nora's expression ease, Jason leaned in, kissing her forehead. And, I believe you can handle it completely. Rest assured, even if there's really a problem, I'll protect you. That's more like it. Nora's mood completely shifted, and after lingering affectionately with him for a while, she drove away. Deliberately leaving Zoe hanging for a few days, Nora, after ensuring there was no recording on Zoe's side, had an open conversation with her. She then requested her to completely delete the video, promising to find a way to keep her in the company regardless. How can you be sure I've completely deleted it? Aren't you worried I might have a backup? Zoe asked before parting. Nora smiled. In fact, apart from in front of Jason, she was always shrewd and competent. You won't. Nora's demeanor was composed. Even if you kept it, I believe it's purely for your own enjoyment. After all, if it really leaks out, it's not beneficial for me, and it would likely have an even greater impact on you. So what do you think, Zoe? Zoe quickly nodded. As long as she wasn't a fool, she could understand the strong threat in Nora's words. Considering her future development in the company, there was no need for them to pay attention to a small figure like her. It's done. Excited, Zoe called Chase in a secluded place. What did she say? Chase asked. Zoe repeated Nora's words, a bit triumphant. I told you she would agree. Keeping me won't cost them much, and there's no need to take such risks. But have you considered, Chase still worried, that in the future, she might want to give you a hard time, force you out, and not even need to personally intervene? What can I do about that? Zoe didn't care about that right now. As long as I can accumulate 2 years of experience first, even if I change jobs, it will be easier to find work than it is now. Besides, I don't think I've done anything wrong. Even if it's wrong, it's because they forced us. Campus recruitment for 5 people, keeping 3, have they thought about our life and death? If they want to play dirty, why can't I use some unconventional methods? That's a problem. So Zoe shared the news with her parents, and the two of them celebrated again. From Zoe's perspective, staying at the company seemed to be a done deal. Unexpectedly, a sudden change occurred. The next day at lunch, Zoe felt something was off in the office atmosphere. She noticed several colleagues whispering and discussing something secretly in the cafeteria. However, whenever she passed by, or anyone approached, they would immediately stop and exchange glances. Zoe was puzzled. But she never expected this matter to be related to her. After all, the company had thousands of employees, and she belonged to the type that was invisible. Zoe, take a look at this. As soon as the afternoon started, Chase sent her a link. Zoe opened it, and within a few seconds, a cold sweat broke out on her back. On a short video platform, there was an explosive, indecent video. The video was the segment she had recorded from the surveillance footage, starring Nora and Jason. Impossible. How could this happen? Zoe's mind went blank. Nora's call came in at that moment. Where are you? Her voice was icy, yet contained restrained anger. In the restroom. Find a place with no one around immediately, Nora said. What? Zoe didn't catch on. I said find a place with no one around immediately. Nora gritted her teeth. Do you want everyone around to hear everything? Oh, okay. Zoe hurriedly got out of the cubicle, looked around, and sprinted to the rooftop. There's no one around me now. What is it? Zoe said. I'm asking you, what should I say? Nora no longer controlled her volume. Didn't you say you deleted the video? Then tell me, where did the one online come from? It's not me. Zoe hastily explained. Not you. Nora cut her off. Who told me you had handled it on the server? Who assured me that no one else would see it? I'm sorry, Nora, Zoe stammered. I really don't know how this happened. I'll go check the server in the control room right away. I'll go now. What's the use of checking now? Nora snapped. In her over 30 years of life, this was probably the first time Nora had expressed herself in such a way. Let me tell you, Zoe, don't think you're the only unlucky one. No matter if I face disciplinary action or get removed, there's absolutely no chance for you to stay in this company. Nora, please let me explain. Zoe was on the verge of pleading. With a snap, Nora hung up the phone. Zoe stared blankly at the darkened screen of her phone, tears uncontrollably streaming down her face. Chase, what do I do? I really didn't know. She dialed Chase's number and as soon as she heard his voice, she couldn't hold back her sobs. Don't cry for now, Chase comforted her. I know it couldn't have been you. But saying anything now is too late. At worst, we'll just find a new job. But if jobs are so easy to find, why bother with all this? I don't understand. I deleted it. Zoe paused midway. Chase. She looked around, walked to a corner of the terrace, crouched down, and cupped the phone with her hand. I remembered something. Do you remember a guy named Parker who was with us? I told you, his technical expertise is data recovery, and he has participated in some competitions. Do you think it's possible that he recovered the deleted video? As Zoe spoke, the more she thought about it, the more it seemed like the only possibility. So, she quickly hung up the phone and went to the third floor to find Parker in the R&D center. Unexpectedly, people in the R&D center told her that Parker had resigned, completed the handover procedures just now, and left. He resigned right after the video appeared online this morning. This was definitely not a coincidence. Zoe then went to her supervisor to inquire if there was any handover of access to the server room by Parker. Access to the server room? The supervisor had some experience. He didn't have access to the server room. He's not a part of our information center. How could he have that kind of access? But they also have servers in the server room for their development. He resigned so hastily. I wonder if he handed over the servers he was responsible for to the server room. Zoe made up a weak excuse and requested authorization from the supervisor to export the records of people entering and leaving the server room in the past few days. In fact, it's not really necessary. Their R&D center arranges the handover themselves. If there are any omissions, it's their department's problem. The supervisor, Evan, said while approving the request. But your diligent and responsible attitude is still commendable. Zoe forced a smile. She exported the records from the access control management system for people entering and leaving the server room, and indeed, there was no record of Parker. However, 2 nights ago, someone entered the server room. Aria. Another female trainee among the 5. Could it be Aria's doing? Given her technical skills, Zoe didn't underestimate her. If Aria had the ability, she wouldn't have to focus all her efforts on currying favor and gathering gossip all the time. Zoe decided to confront Aria directly to get a clear answer. After all, things were already so bad, they couldn't get much worse. However, Aria wasn't at her desk. Her boyfriend resigned, said he's leaving, and will be back in a while. A colleague, who didn't have a good relationship with Aria, rolled her eyes. Aria has a boyfriend? Zoe asked subconsciously. Yeah, it's that Parker from R&D, don't you know? The colleague was even more displeased. They've been together since she joined. She keeps saying how amazing Parker's skills are, that big companies are fighting to hire him, but he's not getting the recognition he deserves in our company. If she looks down on our company so much, why bother coming here? Before the colleague could finish complaining, Zoe turned and ran. She almost confirmed that Aria was behind this. Zoe rushed into the elevator, and as it reached the first floor, Aria happened to be standing outside. Perfect, Zoe stepped out, blocking her way. I'm asking you, did you upload the video online? Aria's expression changed. She took a step back, throwing out a dismissive, "What video?" "I don't know what you're talking about," and walked toward another elevator on the right side of the lobby. "You know." Zoe grabbed Aria's shoulder from behind. "The night before last, you entered the server room. Evan said the request for the monitoring server came through, and you were assigned to replace it." Zoe pushed her behind a massive bird of paradise plant and bent down, getting close to Aria's ear. "I guess you were afraid your backup wasn't good enough, or maybe you were just too lazy to do it yourself, so you asked Parker for help. And then, Parker discovered traces of my actions on the server." Zoe looked at Aria's somewhat pale face. "Out of curiosity or wanting to see if I made a mistake at work, you had him recover that portion of data. With that data, seeing me leaving Nora's office, you could figure everything out." Zoe gritted her teeth. "Aria, even though your school is average, and your technical skills are not great, sometimes I do admire you. You're always good at analyzing situations and making choices that benefit you the most. For example, you knew Parker would leave from the start, and you knew I would be your main competitor, so you seized this opportunity just to eliminate me." "I have no idea what you're talking about," Aria finally reacted, forcefully pushing Zoe away. "I came here to work, not to engage in palace intrigue with you. If you think I've done something wrong, show me the evidence. Otherwise, stop yapping at me." With that, she snorted, lifted her head, and walked around Zoe. Zoe, of course, had no evidence. Nevertheless, she still shared her analysis with Nora. "Do you think saying all this now makes any sense to me?" Nora looked at her expressionlessly. "I'm not afraid to tell you directly that if I can sit in this position, I have the means and ability to keep it. But you've caused me so much trouble. Do you think I'd be willing to keep you around in the future?" Zoe lowered her head. "I know. I will resign voluntarily. I'm sorry, Nora." She turned around, took a couple of steps, and heard Nora speak again. "Actually, the company hasn't decided how many people to keep yet. Even if, as rumored, only 3 will stay, why do you think you wouldn't be one of them?" "Will there be me?" Zoe widened her eyes. "Everyone in the probationary period is evaluated. I can only say your performance is second only to Parker." At this point, Nora smiled, seemingly intent on making her uncomfortable. "What did I tell you at the beginning? Just be steady, proactive, learn more, and ask more. There's no need to overthink things. In the workplace, if you're highly capable, others can't deny you even if they want to." Zoe nodded. Initially, she thought Nora's words were just clichés, like those often said in singing competitions, where judges would tell contestants, "You sang very well, very moving. But sorry, I prefer another contestant." Zoe thought she would eventually face such a result. So, she took the risk to talk to Nora. "Do you think threatening me is a shortcut in your eyes?" Nora seemed to see through Zoe's thoughts, placing her hands on the desk and leaning in close. "Yes, there are indeed many shortcuts in this world. Even getting to where I am today, I can't say there were no shortcuts." Nora looked at her deeply. "Zoe, regardless, it was you who deleted the video from the server in the beginning. So, let me give you a final piece of advice. Shortcuts do exist, and some people have successfully taken them. But the question is, are you qualified to take that route? For you and your clever classmate, is this path a shortcut or a trap?" In the following years, Zoe could recall Nora saying these words. Morally flawed she might be, but she also understood the ways of the workplace. Zoe even realized that sometimes, a genuinely good person might not teach you as much as someone not so good. She wondered if Aria, who was eventually driven out of the company in a sorry state, would acknowledge this. But at least, this kind of mistake never happened again in Zoe's subsequent career.